Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz. Today, I am joined in the studio with not one guest, but two. I am joined with an incredible service that I found on Instagram, and they have amazing, amazing things that they will share with all of you guys out there. So I'm going to read a little bit about the founder and the directors. So Stacey is the founder and Julie is the director, leader. And then I'll get Stacey to share on how it all started, and then Julie will share on all the good stuff, and then there will be time for Q&A, and if anybody would like any information or anything, all that information will be in there. So I'm just going to share a little bit on the ladies, and then Stacey will take it away. So Stacey Womack is a founder and executive director of Abuse Recovery Ministry and Services, ARMS. Stacey has written the Women's Recovery Program material for her journey, their largest program, which has served 29,000 women since 1997. ARMS has expanded across the U.S. and now has leaders in Mexico, Kenya, and Canada. ARMS provides multiple programs serving the whole family, including domestic violence intervention for men and women. Stacey is a respected member domestic violence community. Stacey is also the recipient of the 2012 Judge Herrald Award for outstanding collaborative efforts to end family violence in
Multnomah County.
Oregon. Stacey and her husband Jerry have been married for 39 years and have 6 kids that bring grandchildren. So that's a little bit on Stacey. So I'm going to give you a little bit on Julie, and then I'm going to let the ladies talk. So we get all that information out, and then we just have a good old tea time. Julie Bonn Blank started volunteering for ARMS as her journey leader and to help with marketing 7 years ago. Over a year ago, she accepted the position as a full-time women's service director at the ARMS location. She oversees her journey groups and leaders nationally and internationally develop curriculum, provides training and speaking services, also still serves in marketing for ARMS. She is a Christian and an abuse survivor and feels called to help others who feel stuck in controlling relationships. So, Stacey, I'm going to let you take the floor, and I'm going to sit back and enjoy a cup of tea.
Okay. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, first, Liz, for inviting us to be a part of this. This is such a great opportunity, and God has just been doing amazing things for many years. So for me, my story is unique in the fact that I am not a survivor of domestic violence, but this was truly something that God called me to do. In the midst of me being home with my kids and homeschooling them, God began to speak to me about ministry beyond my family. And I spent a couple years seeking God on what it was he had for me. And this was the door he opened, which was very surprising because somehow I thought I would be doing something I knew something about and maybe something happy. And domestic violence is, a difficult topic, but God called me into it. And at the beginning, I knew nothing more than the average person about it. And I really was just an act of obedience. My only plan was really to lead a group of women through their healing process from domestic violence. I didn't really have any intention to start a nonprofit, but God had bigger plans than that. And so started in 1997, but incorporated in 1999 and got our nonprofit status within months of that. And just at that point, I was just having so many women come forward saying, how do we do this? We want to do what you're doing. And so we had to come up with a way. How do we train? How do we vet people to make sure they're in a healthy enough place to be leading? And we were quadrupling the number of leaders and groups year after year, and it was just growing. And at the same time, in the midst of that, I thought, well, here, God, we're providing something from a faith perspective. What are we, for women, but what are we doing for the men who use abusive behaviors? So, it's really great to serve those who've experienced abuse, but if we're only catching those who are falling and never stopping those who are pushing people off, when we're not really addressing the whole issue. And so my husband and I began training for batter's intervention or domestic violence intervention, or sometimes it's called perpetrator treatment. So we began that program back in 2001 for men, and all from a faith Christian perspective. And then in 2003, we launched our women's domestic violence intervention program that has been going ever since too. And we serve voluntary clients, court mandated clients, Department of Human Services clients, and really have a heart just to help. And we've done in the past other things like domestic violence specific parenting, youth violence prevention, and we still do a lot of training to the faith community, and are partnered with Citygate Network, which is the new branding for Union Gospel Rescue Missions across the nation and in Canada. And that's just been a very exciting thing. So Julie came on just at the right time with a lot of skills that we needed, and not only helping us build our social media, but also being able to write the curriculum for our online training that we now offer to provide the vehicle in which people can carry out the calling that God has put on them to help others. And so we are still in that process of making change. We've got the women's launched, and we're working on getting the men's launched. And it's been a wild ride. You know, I worked out of my home just as a volunteer that first 5 years, and, the phone would ring and my kids would beg me not to answer it because it just got, busier and busier. But I feel so privileged and so honored to have had the opportunity to walk alongside women and men in their process of change, and to see them flourish and grow. And it's just, that's what keeps us going. And we have, I think, 3 leaders that are almost to their 20-year anniversary of leading for us. So that's unheard of in the domestic violence community, because there's so much burnout in domestic violence work that there's a lot of turnover because of that. And we get it. So since the women that we work with, the women who are our leaders for us, our volunteer leaders, because they get to watch these women's lives change right before their very eyes, week to week, we see them change. Even their families comment on, oh my gosh, they're changing. I've had women whose teenage daughters would come with her because they wanted to make sure she would miss group. They take turns coming with her because they saw the changes that were happening in her. And many of our leaders were once participants of our program, and who are in a healthy place and just doing an amazing job of leading. And we just are so excited about this new step that God has taken us in, because it means such a larger reach of what we can do in helping others and equipping others with something that God has anointed and is working. And we're just thrilled to be able to have that opportunity to do that. So that's kind of the quick overview of what we do at ARMS here.
So Stacey, you started a program in 1997, right?
I started the work in 1997. We held our first group because it was October 1st, 1997, which is actually Domestic Violence Awareness Day. God has his perfect timing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that there was a day.
Yeah, the whole month of October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but Domestic Violence Awareness Day is October 1st. And I did a TBN show locally, and I went on our county that I live in, our first domestic violence vigil happened that day. So those are my first activities. And then in January of 1999, we started our first group. So, before that, we were doing some a few small luncheons, and I was doing some phone support, and really God was training me and teaching me. I mean, I probably cried my way through most of it, especially that first year when I was asking God if I could quit every single month, and he kept telling me no. So here we are today, thank God he didn't, he helped me to hang in there and has continued to be my strength in doing this work and seeing things move forward. So,
well, and like you said, there's volunteers that have been there for over 20 years. You don't see that.
No.
People usually top 5 years, and then because it is a hard place to work, right? You see a lot and you hear a lot and that. So, but what I really enjoyed about learning about your service is the aftercare, the workshops, because your service doesn't keep you in it. It gets you on it. It gets you moving in your life. and it gives you direction, right? And that's what we
Right.
need, is we need that direction, because we can all just go to group and say, you know what, this happened to me, this happened to me.
Right.
And we just repeat our stories over and over, but we don't move forward, you
Right.
know? So when we find services like yourself, we're able to move forward. We're able to see that there is hope. After.
Yeah, it's like treading water. If all, there's a place in your healing journey where you need to talk about what you've experienced. You need to work through that, and we really encourage one-on-one counseling for that. But in a group setting, if everybody's just doing that, there's a couple things that happen, is that they really aren't making progress forward, and they can also be kicking up other people's PTSD and causing them to have nightmares when they go home. So this group is not a process group. The Her Journey group is not a process group. It's really a group to help walk the women through a new understanding of what God really thinks about this issue and about them personally. So we watch them go from, knowing that God loves them and values them, to believing it, which causes them then to make choices, to begin setting boundaries, to begin making changes. It's just been, it's just such a wonderful thing. And it feels odd at first because the women think they should be able to, have these big discussions. There is time for that at the end, but the purpose of it is to have something that we can pray for them for. And we feel like our prayer time in the group is just as important as our teaching time. So I just believe it's such a God thing, because we've just seen so many lives changed. And, it blows me away. Most of the time I'm just busy in the weeds, and it's my staff that's coming around going, look, Stacey, look what God is doing. So, it's like being reminded that, the work we're doing is important, is making a difference. And it's just a blessing to know that God is allowing us to be a part of that.
That is awesome. And you said that you have some services in Canada. Do you know the name of the cities?
Well, we have some leaders in Canada who trained through the Union Gospel Rescue Missions, and they haven't actually started one in their mission that I know of. They may have, but we don't. We may need to check with them on that. But we'd love to have some public groups. We have lots of public groups across the nation here, but a public group is something that someone would train to become a leader, certified leader, and then we would continue to support them and also send people their way and be kind of a hub for them so they don't have to worry about having people calling them, that we can be that safe place for them and provide them with even professional liability insurance to protect them as they lead. So anyways, so that's kind of how Julie came to us, is, hearing about what we were doing and knowing that's something that she wanted to do as well.
So I'm going to let Julie take over and share how you got a part of this incredible service.
I'm trying to remember how I heard about ARMS, because that was so many years ago. And that's the one thing I haven't pinned down yet, is how I first heard about ARMS. But I know I heard about ARMS, obviously, or I wouldn't be here. I had a first marriage in my life that to an addicted spouse who was addicted to opiates, and became very emotionally abusive in particular, as well as some other types of abuse. And I got out of that marriage after a lot of counseling and guidance and help from my parents, and got me and the kids out. And he continued his addiction, and he did pass away from his addiction 6 years ago now, even though he was offered help. So we went through a lot, and as I got to know the ARMS program, I wanted to help other ladies who were in that situation, or I wanted ideally to prevent them from even going, into that situation. And as I learned what it was about me that I accepted it for so long, I was able to, pass that knowledge on to other ladies. So I'm kind of a take charge personality, kind of a type A, and I decided I wanted to go to Her Journey. So I kind of marched in a group, and the reason I wanted to go to Her Journey is because I wanted to lead Her Journey, and I wanted to help other ladies that were in this situation. And as I sat there, a lovely lady named Sharon was my person and my trainer. Lesson after lesson, the tears just poured down my face as I realized there was validation for my experience. I realized I wasn't alone. I realized it wasn't my fault. Every single lesson, God had something for me, and I would just sit there and I would just blow my face off. And poor Sharon, she put up with a lot in those early days for me, but she hung in there with me. But I realized at that point, I'm not ready to lead. I want to lead, I want to work toward this, but there's a lot of healing in my own life that needs to take place first. So I continued the program for quite a while, and I also worked on my healing in other ways, outside of the program. And I just have to say the program was life-saving for me. I would not be where I am today. I mean, literally and figuratively would not be here today if not for the Her Journey program. So then I started leading group on a volunteer basis, and I had a rather large group here in our local area that I enjoyed leading. And the more you open yourself to it, the more you learn, and the more you're able to pass on to other people. And I look back at that time in my life, and I wonder, I was there for reasons, obviously, and God didn't want to see me in that spot. It is never God's will for us to be abused, ever. But he can definitely take those situations that are meant for bad and turn them into good. And what I discovered was life after I said no to abuse is beautiful. And I never, ever would have experienced this beautiful life that I have, being in abuse like I was. I had to take the steps. I had to get better myself. I had to get my kids in a better environment. And so we worked really hard to do that. So then I'm remarried now, and my husband loves God tremendously and loves me tremendously and treats me like the crown jewel of the family, which, I appreciate, of course, and soak up. And he and I were called to Chicago for a few years to work a job over there that he was working on. And then we had decided to come back to the Northwest, and it just so happened that a position here at ARMS, opened up as Women's Services Director. And Stacey, I have to say this because it's kind of funny, and I hope you'll forgive me, but I first expressed interest to Stacey, and she's like, well, she goes, I'm not sure you're qualified for this position. And I said, well, okay. I said, let me send you my stuff. And then she read through it and she said, well, I was wrong. You are qualified for this position. And I was like, okay, so can we talk? So I came out, we talked quite a bit, but I also came out from Chicago and we met for lunch and talked quite a bit about both our personal interests and ARMS, because we both have interests in writing. And she wanted some advice as far as writing is concerned. And of course, we always go back to ARMS because that's the love that we have, the passion that we have in common. So they decided, yeah, we're going to bring her on board. So we were like, yay, we got to leave Chicago. That's pretty rough on the weather side of things for me, being from the Northwest, and return home. And I took the position here in the office. So it's been a roller coaster in many good ways. And it's hard, like you said earlier, Elizabeth, it's not easy working with people who are struggling. So I talked to a gal yesterday who, had a situation where her husband put a gun to her head, and then other people came to help and he put guns to their head. And she was just on the phone, just crying and, emotional, and she's out and she's safe, and that is the blessing part of it. She is now safe. She has moved to another state. And now it's time for her, it's time for her to work on her healing and to move forward and to say no to abuse in her life and to build herself up. And we are helping her do that. So it's also very rewarding, in that aspect. I hear 2 or 3 times a week how life-saving her journey was for people in the situation, how validating it is to go to group, how amazing it is to have a group of people who know you're not crazy and who know that you understand and you've been there. So that part is a wonderful experience. And the other wonderful experience is that I do have some skills in marketing. So we were able to push out Her Journey on a nationwide basis. So at one point in time, the only way we had to train leaders was to meet with them here in person in the Northwest, which greatly, of course, limited our ability to grow internationally and nationally. So part of my job coming on was to get that curriculum written and to get the online platform going so that we're now holding training, virtually all over the United States and have groups opening all over. And then we additionally have 2 other programs that we do for batterers intervention, and they are called Mankind and Virtue, and they are for men, both men and women who have chosen abuse in their lives, chosen to be abusive. And our next project this year is pushing Mankind out nationally so that leader training will be available, not just here in the Northwest, but everywhere. And Mankind has a great rate of, Stacey, you can probably speak to that a little bit more, but commonly men go to abuse treatment and many of them reoffend and maybe even get rearrested. And the common, I don't remember the national rate, I think it's like 50, 60%. And ours is like 3 to 5%. So only 3 to 5% of the men that go through our program are rearrested at a later time. And we
Well, it's
feel
something
that,
like you said, right, Julie? Choose to abuse, right?
yes, yes. And I say that intentionally. And that's funny because on Facebook, I got that question a few weeks ago. Why would you say choose to abuse? You know, and here at ARMS, we know it's a choice. This is not something they have to do, no matter their background, even if they were raised in abuse. They are making a conscious choice. They believe it's okay deep down, or they wouldn't be doing it, and they're making it a choice. So we focus on that as a matter of responsibility for the
Owning
people
it,
that-
right?
Yeah, it's not an anger issue. Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
it's not an anger issue. It's someone who's choosing to use their anger in a controlling way. So a lot of people think that's what it is. Well, he just has a problem with his anger. But if it was a problem with his anger, he'd be angry with everyone everywhere. But if he's able to hold a job down and work and be wonderful to everybody at church and everyone else,
Yep.
and he comes home and he's angry, that is not an anger problem. That is a choice to use his anger to control.
And I like that you guys are putting that out there, because I said that about my ex-husband. A lot of people, oh, well, he's not like that. He's not. Once that door closes, you guys don't see that other side of him, because he chooses to hide that from all of you guys. And my children said the same thing. They were like, Grandma and Grandpa, you guys don't know the real daddy. you really don't know him. And it took a long time to get out of that. And this is why I want these kind of services on my tea time and on my platform, because we need to let people know that these are choices people are making. If you are abused, you choose to abuse again. You choose to not abuse. You know, I was abused very over and over, many times by many people, by my parents, by siblings, by family members, friends, and I choose not to give what I was given. And that's what I tell everybody is I choose not to give it. And I like that message that you guys are getting that out there, and that you have workshops and you're getting it out there that people are choosing to abuse people. It's not you were born into it, or
right. And by coming forward and healing, Elizabeth, sorry, I wasn't intending to interrupt. You're breaking that cycle. You know, that's a cycle that Satan wants to go on through generation after generation after generation. And I tell my girls, I think I've said this before, but I want them someday to be able to sit down at the Thanksgiving table with their 20 or 25 descendants and know that they broke that cycle of abuse in that family. And that if they had not stepped out and done that healing that's needed, that there would be 2 or 3 or 4 other family members that were involved in abuse in some way, shape, or form. So that
and they hide it, right? They're good at hiding. Abusers are good at hiding.
Yeah, we call it public image management.
Yes.
I like that.
Public image management. They're very good at that, and so they're very careful about what they say, who they say in front of, or if they're doing physical things like pinching or things like that, they're doing it in places that are often not seen or can be hidden easily. So, you know, they're very much in control. So they're not out of control when they're doing that. They're thinking it through to make sure that they're not going to damage how people see them. And that's why it's so hard when a victim comes forward. Nobody wants to believe her because he's been so wonderful to everybody on the outside. He's on the church council, or he's runs other community events. He helps other people fix their cars. He just is a great guy. And you know, these guys do have great qualities. That's why these women fell in love with them in the first place. Yep. But that, like you said, no one sees what's going on at home behind those closed doors. And he has a whole belief system that gives him permission to behave that way. And so I'd like for any woman who's in this situation to know that there is no amount of talking and trying to explain to him that will make him change, no amount of changing her own personal behavior to get him to change, which is what he wants her to believe, that if she just changes this or that, he wouldn't have such a hard time. There's no amount of doing that. He has to choose to change for himself. And her responsibility is to do what God is calling her to do and set appropriate boundaries that stand up for her value and her worth, because we are God's daughters, and abuse was not something that God intended for intimate relationships. Parent control is never supposed to be a part of it. It was supposed to be equal. And if we're one, it's not like one half of your body is more equal than the other side of your body, right? I mean, we're one, then we work together mutually. And so I'd want women to really know that that's really important for them to understand, because we try very hard. Our women that we work with have tried very hard to save their relationships, and they want him to get to the other side with them because they love him. And we understand that. And that's why probably, I don't think we've had any woman of faith who hasn't tried counseling. I think I've had some women try as many as 9 counselors, and yet studies show that less than 9% of counselors are trained in domestic violence. When they go to college, they get maybe a couple chapters or a couple hours. And so they're not really equipped. And so even our trainings can just be for them. Even if they don't want to lead a group, they can go through the training so that they're equipped to work with people with these issues. And so that's something else, because we want to help educate that portion of the population. And couples counseling is never appropriate with abuse. It's something that we talk about. And yet every woman tries it because, again, we want to save the relationship, right? Yeah. And we also want to educate the faith community, because the faith community is highly undereducated about this. And either they handle it wrong or they do nothing, and it still creates unsafety for the victim in the situation.
Well, it's easy to turn the blind eye, right?
What was that?
It's easy to turn that blind eye and say, you know what, it's not as bad as what you're saying. And, you know, maybe you over-analyzed it, you overthought it, and maybe he was having a bad day. You know,
right.
There's a lot of justification behind the behavior, I find.
And then you've also got the clergy who they can recognize it. Oh yeah, that sound abusive, but they don't know what to do. They really don't know what to do. So if they go talk to her husband, which is sometimes what victims want them to do, which is not a safe thing to do, then he's putting her at risk because she's told the secret, and now she's going to be home alone with him. So it can create more unsafety. So us helping clergy even to understand, what do you do in these situations? How can you keep a victim safe? And when is it the appropriate time to hold a perpetrator accountable for his behavior? How do you do that appropriately?
Yeah. So Julie, what was the number one thing that you knew that this service was going to make a difference in your life? Like, what was the light, like the switch that went off and said, you know what, I want to be a part of this service. I want to help more with this service.
Well, the first lesson in the journey is called Behind Closed Doors. And it's all about, as many recovery programs that we know of, bringing the situation out to the light, you know, talking about what's going on. And for so long, when we're in abuse, we are shut down from speaking our true feelings, from even feeling, you know, our true feelings. And we will often become numb to those things, because when we do that in abuse, it's not safe, and it has, you know, consequences when we share what we're doing and how we feel. So I think the first lesson for me really hit home, because it talks about the denial and how, you know, we can't start saying no to abuse until we admit, you know, to the abuse. And it also talks about our worth in Christ, you know, and we are in abuse for years and years, you know, and I work with ladies all the time who have no self-worth at all. I mean, they have believed these lies that their abuser has told them, and they've absorbed it enough, and they haven't felt comfortable speaking out and saying that's not true. You know, I'm a good person, and it's beat into them. And I don't mean literally necessarily beat into them. It can also be done in very subtle ways. We teach in that lesson. So I think that first lesson was very key for me. It not only goes over, our self-worth to God, and that, I am believed, but it also talks about the types of abuse and the cycle of abuse. And we teach more than just physical abuse. There's financial, there's spiritual, there's, emotional, there's more than that in that category. And to have somebody validate that, gee, just because he didn't throw me down the stairs doesn't mean my relationship wasn't abusive, was huge for me, very much so. And then the other fact in that lesson that we, throughout her journey, we talk about is that, it's not God's will. Many of us, including me, went to our clergy or counselors or church for assistance. And as Stacey said, there's definitely a lack of education there that we are trying to help with. And I've seen it improve, in the last few years, definitely. But they don't always say the right thing, which can create a secondary trauma situation. So I work with ladies often who hear you should submit more, you need to pray and fast over this situation. I've heard them say, gee, your husband's not that bad. He's a good guy. He's an elder, or whatever the case might be, instead of believing her. I would say over 50% of the ladies in her journey have had that, experience. So for me personally, when I heard that first lesson and I heard of my value and I heard that I was understood and I heard that the things that people would question if they were abusive, that they actually were abusive, when I saw the cycle and I realized the full cycle that people go through that leads up to controlling behavior or abusive behavior, it just hit home. It was like God saying, this is a big spotlight, on your situation. And this is what you were going through. So I just knew that needed to get out to other people as much as I could help it do so. And that was a long answer. I'm sorry. That was a roundabout way of.
And there, and this is what we need to do is we need to, I myself, we always apologize, right? We always say we're sorry when we need to stop saying we're sorry, because, these are things that need to get out. These are answers that need to get out. Why you felt you needed to continue with arms, right? And I'm a strong person who believes in messages. There's things that needed to happen in our lives. It's like Stacey said, we didn't ask to be abused, but it happened for a reason, right? We would not be where we are today if it would not have happened to us. You would not be a director if it would not have happened to you. Those are the positives that we need to take out of the negatives. There's always a positive to a negative. There's always the opposite side. It's like they say all the time, there's two sides to a story. There's the good side and there's the bad side. Well, we need that bad side to get to the good side.
Well, and I think that too, it's understanding that we live in a broken world.
Yep.
We live in a world where sin is present and where people, where we all struggle with some selfishness and self-centeredness and things like that. And so it was never intended for any of us to go through any bad things. And yet, because we live in this broken world, God, there's that scripture where he says he's already out ahead of us, creating a path, a way out, a way to overcome this. So while it was never God's plan and purpose for anybody to go through abuse, he doesn't waste anything. And so he wants to take anything that the enemy had completely planned to destroy, kill, and steal from you and turn it around and make it into something beautiful and positive. And it doesn't necessarily mean that, that person's going to be working in the field of domestic violence, but God will use those things that we go through, the hard things that we go through, to help us grow closer to him, to have intimacy with him. I mean, while I haven't been through abuse, I've been through some really difficult things, and I would never wish it on anybody, or I would never wish to go through it again, but I would never go back and undo it because of the great things that I gained, especially that intimacy with God, that closeness with God, that understanding that God is enough for me no matter what. And so, whether the pain has come through abuse or some other way, God's plan is to take it and turn it around for good. And so it's an amazing thing that God is able to do. And I'm so thankful that he can take those things and that I love efficiency. So I love how efficient God is with the things in our lives. Like, he's so efficient, even with our struggles. that if we allow him, he has great plans. Because back in my dark days, when I was asking God to let me die, God didn't let me, and we wouldn't be here today had he, right? And so it's like, I'm so thankful that he was already laying a path before me that I couldn't see, that I didn't believe in, that I didn't think was possible, having no idea what it was, but he knew. And he's used that here at ARMS and in the work that we're doing. So I'm just super grateful for that.
I know when we talked on the phone, Stacey, you were saying that you're starting a new program for men as well.
No, it's not a new program. What we're doing is we're taking Mankind, which is our men's intervention program,
Okay.
making a way possible for people to train to use our materials. So like Julie was saying, we have been running our numbers through the county that we live in, where we get most of our probationary clients come through, and having them check for the last 5 years to see if any of the guys had reoffended. And
Okay.
we've been averaging 5% over these. We've done this for the last 5 years. So every year we do it for the last 5 years prior, and stayed at this 5% rate, which is amazing. Because I don't know what the exact number is. I know I heard one time that it was more like 80% recidivism, and we're at 5.
Wow.
And that doesn't mean that some of the guys aren't still using other forms of abuse, but still, as one way to measure success, that is a way to measure success. And so, we can't expand the way we're doing it just here. So we're putting it out there and online, and creating a retreat actually for that, because there's a lot more work and training for this type of work, so that other organizations that are already working with this populations, like a Union Gospel Rescue Mission, or maybe it's another Christian nonprofit that wants to be able to provide batterers intervention in their county or in their state or in their providence, that if they wanted to do that, we're creating a way now that they can do that. We have never sold our materials, because I never felt like it would be that it would ever be a wise thing to just sell our materials without providing the appropriate training. And so that's why we've come up with this training process, so that we know that when we put the materials in people's hands, they are actually prepared to do it well, to do it with excellence. And this is a huge change for us as an organization. It means being a little more open-handed, but we have 20 years of working with men, and almost now, and so with women as well, who've both been victims and have used abusive behavior. So we have all these years, 22 and a half years of doing the work that we want to help equip others to do. So we aren't an organization that just talks about the work and trains about domestic violence in general. We are actually the boots on the ground, the hands, the arms of God to people who are struggling with these issues, because even the men are God's sons, right? And some of these men haven't realized that what they're doing is even wrong. And, if God can open their hearts and minds to this, and they have motivation to make some changes, again, it's an honor to watch them do the very hard work it requires of them, because it's not just a short process for the guys. It's a long, long process of work and healing, and that they have to do for those they've brought a lot of damage to. And not everybody makes it, and I complained to God about that, and he told me that, that the men's program was the one program I didn't get to define what success was, but that I got to plant seeds for a year and trust him with the rest. So, and he's been faithful.
So do you guys have any services for men?
We do. We serve men in our area in Oregon,
Okay.
but we're training now people to be able to take our materials and do it in their area. So that's what's new. It's that we're training and giving the materials away, and then we'll consult with them and help them through the process.
So that's cool.
Yeah.
Because there are men out there that need help as well, right?
Absolutely. And we're not, for male victims, and they're out there, we usually refer them to some counselors that we really trust, who really understand the issues well. because there aren't groups for male victims. And if you put a group out there for male victims, you would get a group full of perpetrators, because that's one of the earmarks of a perpetrator, is they believe that they are the victim. But male victims usually talk a lot more like our female victims. They say things like our female victims. And female primary aggressors, those who are the primary abuser in the relationship, they talk like our men who are primary aggressors and do the same kinds of behaviors as our men who are primary aggressors as well.
So during this time with the pandemic going on, Stacey and Julie, how do you guys feel in your area? Has the numbers increased in your area?
Yeah, we've had some, one report from one county just for the month of March, the police reported an 89% increase in domestic violence calls, which included a 40% increase in assaults, a 60% increase in harassment charges, and 110% increase in strangulations. So stress always increases. The domestic violence was always going on, but it increases the severity and the frequency of abuse. And so we know, Julie and I know, that there is a ton of women out there who aren't able to call us right now because their husbands are still at home with them, and it's not safe to. So we right now, we have a lot of women who are like caught in the middle. They're right in the middle of getting a protection order, or they're right in the middle of mediation, or right in the middle of their divorce, who've been that, we've been supporting because the courts aren't open, and it's just been really messy and hard. And those are a lot of the women that we've been serving now, along with the women who we were already serving, who were in a safe enough place to actually make that phone call, to do the conference call, because everything's virtual right now. We have a few groups that are just beginning to reopen. But, it's been huge. We know that it has had a huge impact. And for the women that we talk to, some of their husbands are in our program, even them have been calling in and talking about how bad it's been at home. I mean, this has been a hard time for everybody, even under best of circumstances, even if you do have a happy marriage, it is hard. And so then you add all the extra stress of the financial stress, the being stuck at home, the kids at home, all of that just increases domestic violence by a huge amount.
Wow.
Yeah.
The numbers are scary, aren't they?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we're not getting we're getting some calls in for intervention, but some of them we're not, because they're just citing them and then telling them to come to court months down the road, because the courts are just gradually reopened, they're backed up. And so that's kind of scary to know that they're not actually arresting. They didn't want to take them to jail and increase, COVID there. So where does that leave victims when they do call the police for help? Where does that leave them?
Yeah.
And that's very difficult. And then none of the shelters were taking anybody, because they've closed, because they're not going to let anybody new in.
Yeah.
So again, it really has left women in abusive relationships in a very difficult place. So it has been a really tough time. And I just keep praying that God, let those numbers keep dropping, and let things move forward, and don't let us have another spike. Just let us keep moving forward. Give us the help that we need so we can treat this and move forward, be healthy.
And we can get these services open, right? With the doors open again.
Right. But we're serving people now. I mean, we're serving everybody.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here in Canada, I think they just opened on Monday. So, but it's limited, right? Limited access.
Right.
Because we're still on guard, right?
Right.
So, and it's scary that the court systems and everything were all shut down. So all of these abusers kind of get a free ride, right? During that time.
Yeah.
And some of them are really taking advantage of it. They're really just using it full force, Yeah.
And it's just hard. It's just, like I said, the stress just makes it so much worse. And, I think that they said that alcohol sales are up to like what would normally happen around a holiday. And holidays are bad times for victims, right? Because of increased alcohol and drug use and things like that. And, so that's another factor that plays into the increase of abuse. And, and so it shows that too, that these men they don't have the tools to know, how do I deal with what I'm experiencing on the inside? The only way I know to do this is to drink and to lash out and to make it your fault. And it doesn't excuse abuse, because there's no excuse for abuse. And she is never at fault, even if she's being reactive, which is, we're responsible for our own behaviors, but it doesn't excuse his behavior at all. And, I would just encourage women, do what you need to do to be safe. Figure out what that is and do that thing. Even though I know so many women don't want to leave because they don't really want the relationship to end, but sometimes separations are one of the best tools in finding out whether or not he's really serious about getting help, and also giving her some time to regain herself enough to be able to set some boundaries with him.
And that's hard, right? Especially when you love this person so much and you want the best for your family, it is hard to just take that time and move forward, right? Like for myself, I was in 29 different shelters. Mm-hmm. And it was always, I got to go home. I have to fix this. It was me that was the broken one. And then finally it was like, no, this is enough. This has got to stop.
I think Julie could speak to that too, because she's struggled with that, right, Julie?
Yeah, I left a few times and came back. Yeah.
Well, they say on average we leave 9 times, right?
I heard 7 to 8 is what I've heard, but and most women, when they leave, they're not planning on staying away. Their hope is that he'll get a clue, and that when he apologizes and promises never to do it again and promises to go to get help, that he'll actually follow through. But as soon as she goes back home, he doesn't do any of those things. So we tell women, if you're going to separate, plan at least 6 months, because anybody can behave well for a while. And, I know that the faith community struggles with that because they worry it's going to lead to divorce. But oftentimes when it's about domestic abuse and a relationship has those parent control issues in it, this is the only way to actually hold him accountable and have him follow through. And we know when the men come into our program, it takes sometimes us on average, it takes 12 sessions, so 12 weeks to even break through his resistance at coming to groups. So if he comes to one group, he hears all this new information. She's so excited. He's gone to group. She's so excited that he's saying things that she's always wanted to hear him say. So she lets him come home, and he quits group a few weeks later. Yep. So women, be patient and don't focus on him, but what God wants you to do in that situation. How do you keep your focus on God, and how do you heal? Because she can't fix him, and we as women we want to fix our partners
all the time, right? We're the fixers, right? We want to fix everything. That's in our blood, right? That's the nurturer in us, I think. And
it's really the heart of God. You see it throughout the Bible. The Old Testament, God is doing this all the time. He's going, please don't do this. Please don't do this, or this will be the consequence. Please don't do this, or this will be the consequence. Okay. I guess I'm going to have to follow through with the consequence now, because you won't stop. I mean, it is really the heart of God, what we're doing as women. But at some point, you have to draw boundaries that stand up for your value.
Yeah. Since we're on tea time, ladies, is there anything special that tea resembles to you? When you think of tea, what do you think? Like when you think of tea, what do you think of?
Tea to me means relaxation, a break. I don't drink coffee. I never have. I don't like the taste of coffee. So even if my kids give me a piece of candy that has coffee bits in it, I'm like, because that taste stays in my mouth forever. I don't know how.
It's gotta go.
So I have always been a tea drinker. I love tea of all kinds, and so to me, I guess it's a de-stressor sometimes. Sometimes it's a little bit of wake up juice, and ways to not take an afternoon nap after lunch. And then other times in the evening, it's a relaxing thing for me. So that's what it represents to me.
Yeah. And I'm not a coffee drinker either. And I'm not really much of a tea drinker either, but I do like my chai tea, but it has to be like in milk or almond milk and it's kind of like, and I like it flavored. So it's almost like having a holiday in a cup. So, and for me, it also represents I usually drink it in the morning when I get up, and it's my quiet time, my time I'll spend a few minutes praying while I'm drinking it, and sometimes in the evening too, as a just to have kind of a comforting something warm, since I'm not a coffee drinker. It's like, for me, I think that when I think of that, I also think of see it as kind of an elegant thing to do. You think about England and drink,
just relaxing, right?
The
vintage.
It's such an elegant thing to do, but most tea to me tastes like grass, except for the chai. So, like holiday.
Yeah, there are some teas that taste really bad. It's like, oh, let's put some honey or sugar in that tea because that's just not good. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not a big coffee drinker. I drink one coffee a day, and it takes me like 3 hours to drink that coffee. I'm like, I don't know. But I think it's just, everyone says, okay, I'm going to get up and have a coffee. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to do that coffee. And I drink instant coffee, and everybody's like, what, you don't drink per coffee? And I was like, no, instant coffee. So everybody knows that I have my jar when I go and visit or something. I bring my coffee because I like the I like flavored. I like different flavors. And for me, when I think of tea, I think of different flavors, different blends, just like all of us in the world, right? We're all different. We all have our own blend. We all have our own flavors in life, right? And it's truly amazing what a cup of tea will do and make a difference, because today you guys are on Tea Time and you guys are making a difference. And I'm truly honored to have you guys here. And like I said, the messages, I stumbled upon you guys. Don't know how I found you, but I found you. And I'm truly blessed to know that you guys have that service out there for women and men. So if you ladies would like to leave a final remark on arms and what it means to you, and if you have any guidelines or if you have any volunteering options or anything like that, so that the viewers out there can know a little bit more about arms and that.
So would you like me to share like a final statement? Is that what you're asking for?
A little bit from you, Stacey, and a little bit from Julie, and just final remarks on where you see it going. Because Stacey, I know that you have plans for it to grow, and Julie, I know that you're a leader and you have all that incredible knowledge of marketing and all that. So how people can find you guys, like if they want to volunteer or they want to become they want to become a leader, all that good stuff, just so the viewers know how to reach out.
So first of all, I'll answer your first question. What does arms mean to me? What I feel arms means to me is that from the very beginning, I knew that it meant God's heart, that he had seen the tears, he had heard the cries, and he was calling me to be a part of bringing healing to those who had suffered. And so, but really I see it as God's heart. This has always been God's ministry. It's not my ministry, it's his. And I just get to kind of oversee it, I guess, but he's really the one who's in control. And even when you said, I know, Stacey, you have plans to see it grow. Actually, if it was me personally, I'd probably keep it in my own backyard because it would be so much easier to have control. And, I like my ducks in a row, and they're all over the pond right now. So, I believe that God wants this to grow. And I remember someone asking me before we actually started this process, I said, well, do you think it's possible? And I said, I don't think it's ever been possible, but God makes the impossible possible. So I believe it's God's heart that this ministry grows, not because of me, but because of the people out there who are hurting and the people that he wants to help, both men and women, that he wants to help bring healing to the suffering, and that we can be the change in this world around us.
There's a verse in Deuteronomy that was essential to me, and it tells you to choose life. It says each day, life and death is set before you. Choose life. And later on in the chapter, it says, so that you and your descendants may live. And I feel like there are so many ladies out there feeling stuck right now. And that's a choice they need to make. Choose to live and choose to live abundantly. Say no to abuse in your life. So that's why I am here, to help people get to that point. We are available all over online. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. We have a website, and that is at abuserecovery.org. There are a lot of volunteer opportunities, so we always are looking for leaders and facilitators of our groups. We also look for general office help if you happen to be in the Portland, Oregon area with volunteer opportunities there. And we do hold fundraisers as well. And so there are opportunities to help with our annual Stomp Out Abuse, which was virtual this year and a lot of fun. And we also have banquets and luncheons that occur. And so we would love to, do more. We would love your survivor story, and especially if ARMS has helped you in some way, but even if you want to share, we have a blog that we share stories on for that and to inspire other people. And we also send out an email newsletter once a quarter that has more stories in it. So if you want the platform to share your story or feel like, God's telling you, hey, share what you've been through, then there might be an opportunity for that as well. So give us a call us and talk to Stacey or talk to I. Our phone number locally is 503-846-9284. And we have a 1-800 number too that I tend to forget. So I have it on my keychain. So just 1 second here. 1-800, Stacey probably knows it, huh? I know. Our 1-800 number is 866-262-9284. Again, 866-262-9284. You can email us too. I'm just Julie at abuserecovery.org, and Stacey is Stacey with an EY at abuserecovery.org. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to connect.
Thank you, ladies. And thank you for joining me today for Tea Time. If anybody has any questions at all for Julie or Stacey, please leave them in the comments and I will relay them to them. And they are tagged, so they will see the questions as they come in. I know that this is a hard subject for some ladies out there, but awareness is the key. We need to keep sharing, we need to have a voice, and we need to make a difference. So with that, I want to thank you ladies for joining me for today's Tea Time, and we will make a difference one cup of tea at a time.
Yes. Thank you for having us, Liz. We appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.